Good morning, everyone. I'm John Yolczewski, Vice President of Legislative Affairs for LMG Holdings. We are the parent company of LifeSafer and Guardian Interlocks here in the state of Maryland and across the country. And I'm really humbled to be here today to speak on behalf of the thousands of employees and my fellow associates in the interlock industry. We are an alliance. We work together in the interlock industry to enact laws and to encourage the enactment of laws, just as Noah's Law today. We work with law enforcement, the courts, and the motor vehicle administrations across the country, particularly here in Maryland, to save lives. Beginning tomorrow, when Noah's Law goes into effect, we will honor and remember Officer Noah Leotta by placing his image and his memorial badge on every ignition interlock device that we install in the state of Maryland to protect Maryland's people, families from drunk drivers. Every time we place a sticker on an interlock and return to the road someone who is arrested, it will be a lasting reminder of the potential tragedy that can exist and that person and that offender can now avert and not be suspect everyone and put everyone in the state at risk. I want to tell you that Maryland's dedicated law enforcement officers, some of whom are standing behind me, are really the key to making this law work, and we know that they will be very effective in making Maryland's roads safer. After the press conference, we have a vehicle out front if anyone wants to see how an interlock works and a demonstration of the interlock. Our folks will be happy to show you and to demonstrate how this in-car technology works that is now in use across the country, well more than 250,000 in operation across the country, and that will increase substantially here in the state of Maryland. I'm now very pleased to welcome the County Executive of Montgomery County, Mr. Ike Leggett.
Good morning. We are here today to celebrate with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, our state and local officials and others, a milestone. That is a milestone that will help reduce drunk driving on our roadways. It is truly bittersweet that this advancement came at the tragic loss of an exemplary young officers. As I said at the ceremony when a portion of Georgia Avenue was named after Noah, how much we would have all preferred that the honors for Noah's work would have come at the end of a 30 or 40 year long lifespan, a career as a police officer, with perhaps his children and grandchildren or others standing by to watch. But how remarkable that in his short time on the job, his accomplishments could warrant a legacy that he himself probably never would have imagined. I commend Rich Leotta and his wife, Marcia Goldman, for channeling their grief for their son's loss into momentum to keep his spirit alive by taking a passionate leadership role in the fight to reduce drunk driving. I greatly appreciate the work of our police department with support from all area law enforcement. I want to thank our political partners as well, starting with Governor Hogan and our Maryland senators and delegates, especially Senator Raskin and my good friend, Delegate Ben Kramer, who worked diligently to make certain that this was passed. After a long and hard-fought campaign, starting tomorrow, October the 1st, we now know that countless lives and future lives in our county and our state will be, in fact, reduced around this great nation, around the state. With the enactment of this law, we will have one of the strongest ignition interlock programs in the nation. It is very fitting that a picture of Noah is being added to the ignition interlock devices. Police are the guardians of our welfare, and Noah will always be remembered as one of our finest. Now it is up to all of us to prevent further loss of life due to drunk driving. The greatest tribute that we all can pay to Officer Leotta's memory will come at the time before we begin to drink any alcoholic beverages, when we always make a plan for safe and a sober ride home. That's the tribute, that's the time. Let me now introduce a person who's been leading the effort in Montgomery County, the commander of our campaign for traffic division, that is Captain Tom Dadon. Tom?
And no, I am not Tom Didone. But Tom, what the county executive did say is Tom, as always, has been leading the efforts in Montgomery County, and we could not have done this with him. And Tom will be here throughout the entire morning to answer any questions that that anyone may have. Good morning. My name is Darren Popkin. I am the sheriff here in Montgomery County. Before I get started, I just wanted to thank the Leotta family, Mr. and Mrs. Leotta, for not only being here this morning, but for your tireless advocacy, because having been in Annapolis for a number of years, I sat in hearings and thinking that this would go through, and we have been kind of, for years now, it just didn't happen. But with your advocacy, that's why we're standing here this morning. As you can see by my standing behind me, I am flanked by Montgomery County, some of Montgomery County's finest men and women law enforcement. This is also all statewide. Maryland's law enforcement community is alerting all drivers that tomorrow, on October 1st, 2016, the Noah Leotta ignition interlock law becomes effective as a new tool in our efforts to reduce drunk driving on Maryland's roads. Under Noah's law, any motor vehicle operator whose blood alcohol on a breath test is .08 or higher would be required to install an ignition interlock device on their car for 6 months. If a driver refuses to take an alcohol breath test, they would either have to install the interlock for 9 months or their license will be suspended. Noah's law also requires the breath testing ignition devices for anyone convicted of driving while intoxicated. As chair of the Maryland legislative efforts for the Maryland chiefs and sheriffs, I was asked 9 months ago to try to coordinate the efforts statewide of all law enforcement to try to get this bill passed. I put out a message to all of the law enforcement in Maryland and asked them on several occasions to come and support the efforts at the hearings. This was a community effort, and on a number of those days, we had more than 100 law enforcement officers showing up to support this effort. Including in those law enforcement officers were officers from other jurisdictions that had been through similar incidents that Noah had gone through, but had actually survived. A number of those officers testified and spoke at press conferences about the injuries and the difficulties they've had by being hit by drunk drivers while they are out on other traffic stops. This innovative legislation was adopted by the Maryland legislature to honor Montgomery County Police Officer Noah Leotta, who was hit by the drunk driver on December 3rd, 2016, almost 1 year ago, on Rockville Pike, just about 1 mile from the courthouse. While with this law, Maryland will have one of the toughest ignition laws in the United States. It is estimated that 50 to 100 lives a year could be saved as a result of this law being on the books. There were close to 11,000 DWIs that were written in Montgomery County last year. The Maryland Highway Traffic Safety Office estimates that during the 5-year period from 2009 to 2013, on average, there were 155 fatal alcohol-related traffic crashes per year, resulting in an average of 171 fatalities per year during those 5 years. And according to preliminary data compiled by the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund as of this year, I'm sad to say that 24 officers have been killed in the line of duty in these type of accidents. All Maryland drivers are encouraged from Maryland law enforcement to make alternative transportation arrangements if they are planning on going out or if they have consumed alcohol. I want to now introduce one of our strong partners with law enforcement. Without the Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration, it would be very difficult to do this. We are fortunate today that she can take time from her incredibly busy schedule to come join us and say a few words, and that would be the Administrator, Christine Nizer.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you all for being here today. On behalf of Governor Hogan and Secretary Pete Ron, it truly is an honor to be with all of you, and most importantly, to honor the memory and the life of Noah. I know the governor was proud to sign the bill in May and recognizes the significant impact that it truly will make in saving lives. They've asked me to personally extend my thanks on their behalf for everyone's efforts. This truly was a group effort in terms of making sure that the bill would be successfully implemented, and we are grateful for everyone's efforts in this life-saving measure. In particular, we want to say a special thank you to Noah's family, to Rich and Marcia. And it's been said repeatedly today, but I think it bears repeating again. This would not have happened without you, and you are truly making a difference. What Noah stood for in his life is being recognized with this new Noah's Law and the ignition interlock devices that will be on vehicles, and so thank you for that. Also want to thank law enforcement. The sheriff mentioned it. It's an important partnership that we have with you and with Chief Manger and all the men and women in law enforcement, both at the state and local level. And I want to thank you for what you do every day and, frankly, for putting your life on the line to protect us. We could not do it without you. The great thing is, out of this tragedy, Noah's Law was born. The Coalition of Ignition Interlock Manufacturers sponsoring this important initiative. I want to thank you for that as well. We know that this will, again, raise the visibility of this important new law. Like the signs that were unveiled by Governor Hogan on Maryland 97, many of you might have seen them on the way here or on your way out, but it will, again, honor Noah and what his life stood for in terms of preventing impaired driving and stopping folks on the road if they have been impaired. It's another way to remind motorists of this important message and how we can save lives. Unfortunately, drivers do need to be reminded. The sheriff mentioned many of the sobering statistics that unfortunately we have to deal with every day. If you think about it, 1 about every 3 people killed in a Maryland traffic crash is a result of impaired driving. When you think about that 171 people, those aren't just statistics. Those are family members and friends, and that's, I think, the reality that was brought home by this very special family. And the reality is every one of those deaths is preventable. There's no reason for any of them to happen. We know it's a complex problem that requires a variety of solutions, and we know that ignition interlock is one of those solutions. It is a device that truly saved lives. We have a great program in Maryland that's been recognized nationally, but we do believe this will make it a better program and allow us to save more lives and bring those numbers down when we look at those fatalities every year. Just last year alone, 4,000 trips were stopped by an ignition interlock device when somebody had a blood alcohol content of 0.08 or higher. They were legally drunk, and the ignition interlock device stopped the vehicle from being started, from that individual getting on the roadway and potentially resulting in another fatality. The reality is, the statistics show it, the devices will save lives. And we certainly are looking forward to the law going into effect on October 1st. Again, want to thank everyone for being here, and more importantly, thank the entire group for the efforts that went into making this law possible. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who's a true partner in our efforts to keep impaired drivers off our roads. He's focused on the criminal penalties, and it works hand in hand with the administrative penalties we give at the MBA. It's my pleasure to introduce the Montgomery County State's Attorney, John McCarthy.
Thank you, Christine. It's an honor to be here with so many partners that joined and helped this become a successful effort down in Annapolis. I think, Mr. and Mrs. Leotta, I think you learned a lot about Annapolis and how difficult sometimes it is to even get things done when something makes so much sense as this bill really does. And we are very, very thankful to you. The bill goes into effect tomorrow. And the expanded coverage, and my friend, the sheriff from Montgomery County, I think Darren has outlined exactly what the bill actually does. Basically just expands the categories of individuals who mandatorily will have to install an ignition interlock. And every one of those new categories makes eminent sense. Not only does it expand the categories of people who mandatorily, if you want to start your car, you've got to have this ignition interlock system in there, and if you will not be able to start your car if you cannot blow into the machine, and we see that there's no alcohol in your system. In addition to broadening the categories, we are also extending substantially under this law the period of suspensions, the period of time when you lose your driving privileges also are expanded. And to think that, what's really sad, one of my young prosecutors, Mark Anderson's here, right before I came up here, he just reminded me of a case where a woman had been involved in Montgomery County in a drunk driving incident that resulted in a vehicular homicide. She got paroled. She was out on parole, and the judge and the parole commissioner required her to have an ignition interlock on that car. But she had killed an individual in a driving incident and then tried to start a motor vehicle, but because the interlock system was on her car, she could not drive the car. Now, that's a pending violation of probation that's still here in Montgomery County, but it's the same thing that we just heard from Christine. This is something that actually saves lives, and if somebody who's already killed and taken a life doesn't get the message, that's why this bill is so important, because even people who have had that experience still cannot, in some instances, prevent themselves from getting behind the wheel and attempting to drive a car in this state. Again and again, everybody says the same thing. This bill is going to save lives. There's a lot of things that happen sometimes when we support pieces of legislation down in Annapolis and we're really not sure what the effect is going to be. We know what the effect of this bill is going to be. We know what the research tells us. And there's absolutely no question that people will save their lives here in this matter. The fact that Noah's image is on this, it is absolutely appropriate. It's unfortunately so often in Maryland to get a law changed, you need something to inspire you. Something to inspire the legislature, something to get the community behind you, to get the kind of support and energy behind something to make something happen. It took, unfortunately, Noah's death to get the energy behind this bill. I'm just so honored to be here with Noah's parents. They fought this fight, not just in Annapolis, but in every public forum they possibly could. We are honored that you are with us. We are honored that we are honoring your son. As the state's attorney, let me tell you, I am pledging the support of my office, not only in the categories that are covered by this bill. There are other instances where we can go into court and ask a judge to exercise the discretion in broader categories and put this ignition interlock system in cars, and we will in fact do that. We are in full support of this bill. We are inspired by Mr. and Mrs. Leotta here and by my partners in this, and it is now my pleasure to introduce two people from the legislature who, one is my delegate, Ben Kramer from District 19, and the other is my friend, and they're actually both my friends, I should say that. And the other is my friend, hopefully soon-to-be Congressman Senator Raskin, who were the sponsors. And I will tell you, they work this bill every day. Nothing happens easily, and without the work of these two men, this would not have been possible. I'd like to introduce them for their comments. Gentlemen.
State's Attorney McCarthy, thank you so much for your kind words. I want to say something first about Noah's life. He was a son of Montgomery County. He was a son of Maryland. He went to Montgomery College, devoted himself to law enforcement, and went on the force. And on the force, he devoted himself specifically to fighting drunk driving. And he was out on the front lines the night when he was killed. He had pulled over one drunk driver. He was returning to his car when another drunk driver came and ended his life. But he lived a life of courage, and for a young man to die at that age, it's remarkable how much focus he had on what he believed in. And it is a testament to that focus, to that courage, to his integrity, that Noah's movement continues to go on. I want to say something about Noah's Law. And I agreed with everything that the state's attorney said, except one thing. We never called it Noah's Bill. We always called it Noah's Law. We did, because we knew that it had to pass, that there was a sense of inevitability once the Leotta family got into this. Delegate Kramer and I started introducing this legislation back in 2009. And in some sense, we owe you an apology, because if we'd been able to get this done before, it might have saved Noah's life. We didn't. We pushed the stone up the hill as much as we could, but it took you guys for us to get over the hill, and it took Noah's sacrifice. I want to say something about Noah's stamp. I think it's an extraordinary memorial to him that it will be on all of the interlock devices. And I was thinking we should take that stamp and put it on the U.S. mail, on our envelopes. Anybody know a congressman? Because this movement should not stop in Maryland. It really shouldn't. It should go on. And let me say something finally about Noah's family, because I'm almost exactly the same age as Rich and Marcy Leotta are. I have a daughter who's exactly the same age of Noah, was born the same year. And my kids are all in that age range. You know, to lose a child reverses the natural order of things. You know, children, we all want a long life, but children should bury their parents. Parents should not bury their children. But you guys took the grief, and the pain, and the tragedy, and you turned it into something just remarkable. And Ben will tell you, literally, we could not have gotten past the legislative finish line without you and what you did, and without the officers, Noah's colleagues who came up every single day so that our colleagues in the General Assembly could not avoid them. They could not avoid the Leottas. They could not avoid the other families of victims who came and stood with them, and could not avoid Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and could not avoid the officers. So Annapolis is a tough town, but it cannot stand up to Noah's movement. There's no way. It was overcome. So I just want to say, you're not only model parents, you're model citizens, and the people of Maryland thank you.
Good morning. I'd just like to take a quick moment and introduce some of the representatives of our elected officials who are here today. Laurie Edberg, please stand up, with Senator Barbara Mikulski's office. We have Catherine Provost from Congressman Chris Van Hollen's office. And we also have Lisa Mandel-Trupp with Councilmember Sid Katz's office. So thank you all for joining us on this very special occasion. And this occasion marks a very important date, that starting tomorrow, every driver that gets on Maryland's roads and they've been drinking is now on notice that there is a strong likelihood that you will not be starting your car again until you blow clean through an ignition interlock. And the bottom line is simply this: ignition interlocks save lives, period. And starting tomorrow, Maryland will join those states that have said, we are going to push back against those who are so reckless and thoughtless that every day they take the lives of our friends, neighbors, and family members when they get behind the wheel of a car and take the thoughtless action of driving after they've been drinking. No more, because ignition interlocks save lives. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to move the ball even forward, but we would have not accomplished what we did without the team effort that came together during this past session in Annapolis, and that started with my friend, County Executive Ike Leggett, who made a commitment at the funeral service for Noah Leotta that he would get out in front on this issue and push this past session for passage of a strong ignition interlock, and he kept his word. Police Chief Tom Manger, Captain Tom Didone, and the women and men of the law enforcement community were all out in front of this issue on a daily basis in Annapolis, making sure that our legislature knew it was their lives as well as the other citizens that were at risk. We needed to pass Noah's Law. Mothers Against Drunk Driving and the Washington Regional Alcohol Program were visible in Annapolis every day pushing this legislation. And by the way, it did not pass until the waning hours of sine die, the very last day of the legislative session. And it wouldn't have gotten to the point that it did were it not for Noah Leotta's parents, Rich and Marcy, who made sure that every member of our state legislature knew there was no alternative other than to pass Noah's Law. And with their help and the help of the team that came together, including our friend Bill Bronrott, who was also very much present in Annapolis during the entire session, and working with my partner throughout this, State Senator Jamie Raskin, who has been in the trenches fighting this issue for 7 years now, we have passed what is one of the strictest, if not the strictest, ignition interlock laws in the entire nation, and it will save lives. So with that, I would like to introduce Donna Hathaway Beck from Mothers Against Drunk Driving, who is here with us today, and she'd like to offer a few words as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And good morning, very good morning. My name is Donna Hathaway Beck, and I am the victim of a drunk driver. I am also the mother of a police officer. Very proud mother. I have been a volunteer with Mothers Against Drunk Driving since 1990, and I currently serve as chair, Victim Services for Maryland MAD. MAD had many valuable partners in this very long but righteous effort to finally enact the all-offender ignition interlock law. Thank you to all, including the Washington Regional Alcohol Program, Kurt Erickson, and especially our thanks to Chief Manger and the Leotta family, whose tireless efforts made all the difference. Thank you for sharing your son with us. To the men and women of Maryland law enforcement who put their lives on the line every day to protect us all, thank you. So many officers who had been hit and injured by drunk drivers in Maryland and their chiefs came to Annapolis multiple times this year to make sure that this time justice was done. Finally, our thanks to the Coalition of Ignition Interlock Manufacturers for producing the Noah's Law sticker that will be placed on every ignition interlock in Maryland. So here we are, just hours away from Noah's Law going into effect. The baton is now being passed to those we entrust to fully embrace Noah's Law to stop DUI offenders from reoffending and to save lives with this simple but effective technology. How many senseless deaths, including the tragedy of Officer Leotta, and how much heartache could have been prevented had this bill been acted on years ago when MAD, Delegate Kramer, Delegate Raskin, and law enforcement first took it to Annapolis. We should not have to wait for a catastrophic incident to act on research-based solutions to save lives. Today, I proudly announce that Maryland MAD is sending a formal letter to all district and circuit court judges and to all prosecutors to consider requiring interlocks as a condition of probation before judgment. This interlock is the ultimate in probationary tools. Noah's Law is now in the hands of our police, prosecutors, judges, motor vehicle administration, and all who are part of our criminal justice system. We count on you. Thank you.
Would you all please join me in welcoming and thanking Rich Leotta and Marcy Goldman for all they did to get this law passed? Rich and Marcy, you want to say a few words and do the honors?
So here it is. This is the sticker that's going to go on all these interlocks. Marcy.
Now ask Senator Raskin, Delegate Kramer, Mr. Leggett, Sheriff to unveil the other.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here today. You know, I look at this picture, and it's hard. It's hard to look at my son's beautiful blue eyes, his smile. It's just so hard. But he's making a difference. You know, our dear son, Officer Noah Leotta, he gave the last full measure of devotion to try to protect us from the scourge of drunk drivers. And when he passed, we were distraught. We didn't know how to handle it. We went away, actually. We left the country. We came back and we knew we had to do what Noah would have wanted to continue. So we took up the mantle. Ben Kramer, Jamie Raskin, they came and visited with us, explained a little bit about Annapolis, not enough. But they've been fighting this battle for years, and we thank you for that. And we thank you for coming to us with this opportunity to continue Noah's legacy. And that's what's so important. But it wasn't just us. There were so many people involved. You know, people are recognizing us. We carried it across the finish line, but this has been battled for 7 years. 7 years, so many victims, so many families, so many hearts broken. And that's what we are trying to prevent. Ike Leggett, Chief Manger, all the men and women in blue, everybody that's been behind this MAD, Washington Regional Alcohol Program, everything, everybody, the community. It wasn't just us, it was a community thing. I think people finally got it. People got it. They got it in their heart. This is Noah's badge that I wear all the time. They got it. They understood. So we went to Annapolis. We had all the challenges, the roller coaster ride. It was interesting. I don't know if I want to do it again, but it was a lesson to be learned. But we got it done. We got it done. And Noah's Law was passed. And that was to recognize Noah for his service, his courage, and his sacrifice. That's what it's all about. And now, the law. The law primarily has to do with expanding interlocks, this simple device. And it's going to save lives. It's going to make a difference. This is the thing. Nobody goes to jail. It's an administrative correction. It's going to change behavior. It's going to save lives. We know it makes a difference. But now we're also adding to this device Noah's image and badge here, the memorial badge, so that people will understand. You're not just blowing in a device. This is the impact that you've caused by what you have done. And we don't want you to do it. We want to protect you and others. So this is representing, this image, representing all the men and women in blue and all the victims of drunk driving, not just Noah. So now, today, it's fitting and proper that we're in these halls of justice, because we're turning this over now. At midnight tonight, 12:01 tonight, Noah's Law goes into effect. We're turning this over to the justice system. That's who has control of this. When I was thinking about it and I put this badge, this support Noah's Law, I was saying this continues. This button here that says support Noah's Law, it's now speaking to those in the justice system. That's what it's doing. First it was Annapolis with our legislators. They did the right thing. They finally got it. They unanimously passed Noah's Law. So now we're passing this on. We're passing the baton to another part of the system. We're passing it on to our men and women in blue. We're passing it on to the prosecutors, the judges, and everybody else that's involved in our legislative and legal system of justice. And so what we need is for the law to be implemented and enforced effectively and efficiently. Because if we do that, we will make a difference. We're going to save lives, because it's going to, those offenders, it's going to take them off the road from driving drunk. It's going to change their behavior, and it's going to save lives. Ultimately, that's the goal. We don't want anybody else to have to suffer as we do. We don't want that, and that's what we're trying to do. So when everybody in our justice system does the right thing, as we've said so many times in Annapolis, they will be giving justice to all the victims of drunk driving. They will be honoring Officer Noah Leotta's legacy. That's what will be done. And I know they're going to do the right thing. I know they know what to do. They're behind this, and this law is going to make a world of difference and save lives. But remember, this interlock is for those, and the law is for those that just can't seem to get it right. We're trying to help them and make sure that they don't hurt themselves and others. But it's very simple, and I've said it before. For all of us, basically, all we have to do is act responsibly. Just think of community rather than individually. If we think that way, if we think and plan ahead, it's not so hard to just don't drink and drive. If you plan, you can have a safe and sober ride home for the sake of yourself, the sake of everybody else, and no lives will be lost. That's what it's all about. So tomorrow, 12:01 tonight, Officer Noah Leotta is reborn as Noah is on patrol. Thank you.